Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the Contradictions Book Tag. I was tagged in this by Venus over on Venus Escapes to Read. I will link her channel down below. This is a book tag full of questions that are just like contradicting yourself. So I think it's pretty cool. This is my first book tag besides the BookTube newbie tag. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The first question is, I love this genre, but I didn't like this book. This one is maybe a little controversial. I normally love fantasy and YA fantasy. So my first book is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that's kind of like 1920s Asian-inspired fantasy, very loosely based on Romeo and Juliet. And it kind of had everything that I want in a book. It had like enemies to lovers, it had like fantasy elements, it had a retelling. I like Shakespeare, I do theater for a living, so I know a lot about Shakespeare and his plays. But man, I really didn't like this book. It is a debut for this author, so I'm hoping that her books improve as she continues on. I just felt like the writing was poor. Like, I felt like I knew all of the plot twists before they came. I felt like the relationship wasn't really believable. Basically, Romeo and Juliet, but it's Roma and Juliet, I believe. Yeah, Roma and Juliet. They had dated previously, but now they're not together and they're part of like two warring families, kind of. But none of it really felt believable. They're only like 17 or 18, I think, in the book. And it just felt really weird. I wasn't rooting for them. They were like mean to each other, which I understand it's enemies to lovers, but I don't know. It just didn't feel right. And the plot was very predictable. And I just didn't love this story. I'm hoping that her books improve. I've heard that the second book is good. I honestly don't know if I'll pick it up because I don't care about these characters really at all. This book is really loved in the book community. I see people talking about it all the time, so I think I am a minority in this opinion, so give it a shot. If the premise sounds cool to you, it could just be I read it at the wrong time. Who knows? The next question is a genre I rarely read, but I really loved this book. I do not read a whole lot of historical fiction. I don't generally read a whole lot of realistic fiction at all, like whether it be contemporary fiction, historical fiction, or anything like that. The only thing that I kind of read that's like realism is probably romance books, but just like contemporary fiction, historical fiction, not my thing. However, when I was in college, there was a summer that I was kind of alone. I was working at a theater company and my husband and all my friends were working out of state at other theater companies, so I was kind of like just alone chilling with my dog for a summer. And I read a lot. And one book I picked up was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. And this book was incredible. I remember it ripping my heart out of my chest. It is set during World War II, and it is set in France when Germany occupied France. And it is about these two sisters who are doing what they can to fight this war. And it is breathtaking. The relationships are really beautiful. I felt like the plot was, while slow at times, it felt okay because the writing was so good and the relationships formed were so good, and we really like explored this dark world they were living in. I have read some other Kristen Hanna books since. I read The Great Alone, and I think I DNF'd The Four Winds. I don't remember. And they weren't as good because, again, I don't really read this genre. But there was something about The Nightingale that was just like so profound to me. I don't know if it was because it was during such a harrowing time. I don't know what made this specific historical fiction book work for me, but it really did. The next question is a trope I normally love, but I did not like this book. The trope that I normally love is enemies to lovers because, like, who doesn't love a good enemies to lovers? However, it is not always done well. We all know this. And one book, again, this might be controversial, one book I really felt like did not do it well was Serpent and Dove. It was, I don't know, it was just poorly written, I think. The plot was fine. It really had everything that I would think I would want. It's about witches and a witch hunter, and a witch and a witch hunter fall in love, you know? So, like, that sounds incredible. But the romance was never made to feel very believable. I never was really rooting for them at all. It felt cringy and awkward, and I just, like, was not enjoying it. I read it pretty quickly, and I just remember being like, that's it? Why is everyone talking about this? Like, I just didn't think it was interesting. I didn't think the romance felt warranted. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't feel great to me. It felt like it was trying to be Nina and Matthias, and it was failing. Yep, I don't know. Just didn't like this book. The second question is, I hate this trope, but I loved this book. A trope I normally don't really get into, I don't know if it's because I haven't read a lot of it or just because it's not my thing, is a second chance romance. I normally just am not really interested in it, but one that I thought did really well was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. This one is about a engaged couple, and they are kind of tired of each other. They're perfectly content in terms of, like, they aren't fighting, they, like, live their lives harmoniously, but both of them are just bored. They're bored of the other person, they don't really like the other person, but they've already put down a lot of money on this wedding. So when they find out that neither of them are very happy, they want to call it off, but it is expensive. Whoever calls it off will have to be the one that pays for this non-refundable wedding. So they start this kind of, like, almost like prank war where they're, like, trying to get the other one to call off the wedding. And they end up falling back in love and blah, 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 happily ever after, because it's a romance novel. But it was so fun. I really liked it a lot. At first I was like, man, no wonder I don't like second chance romance. These people are intolerable. But then, like, as the pranks progress and as they kind of relearn the other person, it got really cute, and I thought it was really well done. I liked it a lot. I am excited to read more of her books. I don't believe I've read anything else by her, so I'm excited to continue on. The next question is, I love this author, but I didn't love this book. This one was really hard for me. An author I really love is N.K. Jemisin. I think that her Broken Earth trilogy, the one that starts with the 5th season, is a masterpiece, unparalleled in fantasy. I honestly have never read anything like it. It is so unique and incredible. I've talked about it in other videos. Like, must read. I believe I put it in my best fantasy of all time video, which I'll link above. This series is incredible. However, recently, I tried to read The 100,000 Kingdoms by her, which is one of her earlier works, and it had all of the things I thought I would love. It's like about the gods versus humanity and all of this stuff. But I don't know if it was the prose or the way the story was told. I was listening to it on audiobook, and I just could not get into it. I was so bored. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't really understand who the characters were or how that all worked. We were just kind of, like, dumped into this world. I don't know. I just didn't love it. I DNF'd it. I think I got maybe like 30 or 40% into it. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I don't know if it's because it's one of her earlier works, and so maybe it just, like, wasn't gelling with me, or it wasn't written as well as some of her later works, but it was just not the best. I did not like it that much. I am still hoping to get into some of her other books. I know I really want to read The City We Became, because it is also one of her more recent releases. So I definitely have not given up on N.K. Jemisin, but that particular series, I do not know if I'll revisit. If you've read it and I should have stuck it out and you think it gets a lot better, let me know. Maybe I'll give it another shot one day. Maybe it was audiobook format that wasn't working for me. But yeah, I didn't really love it. The next question is, I previously disliked this author, but I loved this book. This one, I'm using the same book twice. I didn't like the book the first time, I liked it the second time. And that is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I read Gideon the Ninth the first time via audiobook, and if you've read this book, like, you understand it is very confusing, and you're kind of just, like, dumped into this world and expected to know what's going on. So I had no idea. The first time I listened to it, I was not following. All the names are really long and complex, so, like, I could not remember who was who. Anytime somebody was brought up or was talking, I was like, well, don't know who that person is either. I could only remember Gideon and Harrow. Everyone else, I just could not remember. I mean, their names are long and complex, and I just wasn't following the different houses. I couldn't remember which was which. It just all wasn't working for me. So I finished the whole book, but I was just like, okay, I don't know what I just listened to. But I see people raving about it all the time. And like lesbian necromancers, like literally say less. I'm in, I'm 100% invested. So I was like, I'm going to read this again. I'm going to read a physical copy and I will see if I like it better. So I checked it out from my library and I read it last week and I get it now. I just needed to read it physically. It was so good. The ending had me tearing up even though I already knew it was coming. And I thought that it was so fun. The names, since I was able to read them, but I had also heard them, so I knew how they were pronounced, actually I felt like made it a lot more fun. Like I had a fun time saying their names in my head. That sounds so dumb, but like, you know, when you're like reading really good prose and you're having fun reading it because of the prose itself, like the names added to that. And the dialogue was really fun. Gideon is like hysterical. All of Gideon and Harrow's banter is so fun. And I just really liked it. The romance, like, I was sold on it. And I just think everyone should read it. Yeah, so this author, at first I was like, she writes too confusing. I don't get it. Like, I didn't love the author. Mostly because I didn't love this book. But I read it again, really liked it, excited to read Harrow the Ninth. Very excited after that ending, now that I understand the meaning of the ending. So here we are. The next prompt is, I love this cover, but I didn't really love this book. The book I'm going for this one is Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This book I see Jesse and Reagan always talking about on their channels, and I'll link their channels below. So I was very excited to read this book. This book is not bad by any means. I just really wasn't following the characters. I wasn't like invested in their story, and the plot wasn't interesting enough to keep me engaged. I read the first and the second one, and they were just okay. I have the arc for the third one, so I will be continuing, but they were just like not as good as they were hyped up to be. It's a fantasy book with a really cool magic system where basically these people can rewrite reality for certain objects. So for instance, say there's like a wagon, you can tell the wheels they're going downhill so that they roll even if they're not, kind of thing. So like things like that. And so it follows this like ragtag group that are trying to like do a heist kind of thing, like something like that. And it was definitely very cool. The magic system was a lot of fun, but it was very complex. So I felt like a lot of the first book we spent learning the magic system. So I was like, well, maybe the second book will be a little less descriptor. But I felt like we were still learning the magic system in the second book. The characters were fun, but like none of the romance or anything like that was really clicking with me. It has like the found family trope, which I normally love, but it just wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't like really gelling. I don't know. I have no idea what I specifically didn't like about this book. I just remember putting it down and being like, okay. So just maybe not my cup of tea. Maybe just not a story for me. I don't know. I do want to read his other series. I've seen a lot of people talking about that, so I do hope to check that one out. The last prompt is, I don't like this cover, but I love this book. For that one, I'm going to do The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. The cover is just not great. It's like this painterly feeling, like Venice-y backdrop. I'm sure it looks a little better on like the hardcover edition, but I've seen that as well. It's just this, but blown up and better. And I don't know. It's hard to see what it is. I don't like the cover because it took me like really looking at this cover to see what it was. However, I love this series. Scott Lynch is one of the people that is known for procrastinating. The last book of the series, or the fourth book, I don't know if it's intended to be the last, has not come out, and it's been like 10 years or something. Like, it has been a long time, and we are still waiting for this fourth book. But very good. This book follows a group of orphans who are trained from a young age to be master con artists and thieves. And it follows them throughout their lives as they grow to adulthood, and the different heists and cons that they try to pull off, and their relationships and romances throughout that time. And it's honestly so beautiful. Locke and Jean are like some of the best friendships in fantasy fiction. Like so incredible. The heists are always like really ingeniously planned out. Funny story, I actually have created a whole D&D character based on this story. I basically created my own Locke Lamora. I created somebody that can like infiltrate the upper echelons of society to kind of like help fix society and steal from the rich and give to the poor kind of thing. So yes, I'm a super nerd, super duper nerd, but this book I really love a lot, but the cover leaves something to be desired. So I am going to tag Kishore next. I will also link her channel down below. She also reads a lot of fantasy, and we have had some great discussions about books, so I'm going to tag her. So you're next. This was a lot of fun. I hope that I didn't stir the pot too much with some of my books I didn't like, but you know, some books just aren't for everyone. I may love books you don't like. We're all here just to enjoy reading, so at the end of the day, that's all that's important. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. And until next time, thank you.